The ink wasn't even dry on the paper when the sound escaped his throat, a cruel, dismissive chuckle that echoed off the mahogany walls of the conference room. Most men look somber when ending a 10-year marriage. Declan Cross? He looked like he had just won the lottery. He tossed the pen onto the table, looked his wife in the eye, and grinned. Finally, I'm free of the dead weight. He thought he was discarding a broken woman. He had no idea he had just unleashed a titan. He signed the divorce papers laughing. But 3 months later, when the gavel fell at the auction house, he was the one crying. The conference room on the 42nd floor of Holloway & Associates smelled of lemon polish and stale coffee. Outside, the gray Seattle rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the city into a blurred watercolor of charcoal and steel. But inside, the atmosphere was brittle, ready to shatter at the slightest provocation. Serafina Sterling sat with her hands folded in her lap. She wore a charcoal dress that was 3 seasons old, her hair pulled back in a severe, practical bun. To the casual observer, she looked defeated, a woman shrinking into the upholstery of the leather chair, trying to occupy as little space as possible. Across the massive oak table sat Declan Cross. He was the picture of modern, corporate vitality. His navy bespoke suit fit his broad shoulders perfectly, a stark contrast to Serafina's faded attire. He checked his Rolex, a Submariner she had saved for 2 years to buy him for his 30th birthday, and sighed loudly, tapping his fingers against the polished wood. "Are we done yet, Grant?" Declan asked, not looking at his wife, but at his attorney. Grant Sterling, no relation to Serafina's maiden name, purely a coincidence that Declan found endlessly amusing. "I have a 2 o'clock with the investors for the Orion project. I can't be late because we're arguing over what? The toaster?" "It's the equity division of the marital assets, Mr. Cross," the lawyer said, shifting uncomfortably. He was a man who had seen many divorces, but the coldness radiating from Declan was distinct. It wasn't the heat of anger, it was the chill of absolute indifference. Serafina is legally entitled to 50% of the shares in Crossline Technologies due to the initial capital she provided during the founding. Declan let out a sharp, barking laugh. He swiveled his chair, facing Serafina for the first time in 20 minutes. His eyes, once the warm hazel she had fallen in love with during their university days, were now hard and mocking. "Capital?" Declan scoffed. "She gave me $5,000 from her grandmother's inheritance, Grant. 5 grand. Crossline is now valued at 400 million. You think she deserves half my empire because she bought me a used laptop and paid for the server hosting in 2016? "It's the law, Declan," Serafina said softly. Her voice was steady, surprising even herself. And it wasn't just the money, it was the code. "The kernel for the predictive algorithm? I wrote that while you were sleeping off hangovers." Declan's face darkened instantly. He leaned forward, his charm vanishing. "You typed what I dictated. Don't confuse being a secretary with being an innovator, Sarah. You're a housewife. You arrange flowers. You host dull dinner parties. You haven't written a line of code in 6 years." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He scribbled furiously, ripped the paper out, and slid it across the table. It stopped inches from her hand. 2 million, Declan said, his voice dripping with condescension. "And the house in the Hamptons. That's the settlement. Take it, sign the papers, and walk away. If you try to fight me for the shares, I will drag this out until every penny of that 2 million is spent on legal fees. I will bury you in paperwork so deep you'll need a submarine to find sunlight." "Do you really have the stomach for that, Sarah?" Serafina looked at the check. $2 million. It was a lot of money to most people. But compared to what they had built, compared to the nights she had stayed up fixing his mistakes, covering his tracks, and smoothing over his temper tantrums with the board, it was an insult. But she also knew something Declan didn't. She knew about the Orion project he was so desperate to get to. She knew the foundational code, the code she had written, had a shelf life. It was built on a legacy architecture that couldn't handle the scaling he was attempting. Without the patch she had designed in her head but never implemented, Crossline Technologies was a ticking time bomb. She looked at Grant, the lawyer. He gave her a sympathetic, almost pleading look. "Take it," his eyes said. "He will destroy you." Serafina reached out and took the pen. "Smart girl," Declan smirked. His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, and a soft, genuine smile touched his lips, a look he hadn't given Serafina in years. The screen lit up with a notification from Isabella. The message preview was short. "Champagne is on ice, baby. Hurry up." Serafina saw it. The final dagger. Isabella Vane. The 24-year-old marketing intern Declan had promoted to VP of Communications last month. The rumors were true. Serafina felt a strange sensation in her chest. It wasn't heartbreak. That had burned out months ago. It was clarity. Cold, crystalline clarity. "I'll sign," Serafina said. "Good," Declan replied, already checking his watch again. She signed her name with a flourish. Serafina Sterling. She pushed the papers back. Declan grabbed them immediately. He quickly scrawled his signature on the line. And then, it happened. The moment that would haunt him for the rest of his life, though he didn't know it yet. As he capped the pen, he threw his head back and laughed. It was a loud, boisterous sound of victory. "God, I feel lighter already," he exclaimed, standing up and buttoning his jacket. He looked down at Serafina, who was still seated. "You know, Sarah, you should thank me. You were never cut out for this world. The stress, the high stakes, you're too fragile. Go find a nice librarian to marry. Be mediocre. It suits you." He didn't wait for a response. He grabbed his briefcase and strode toward the door. "Send the finalized decree to my office, Grant. I'm going to celebrate." The door slammed shut, the vibration rattling the glass of water on the table. Silence descended on the room. Grant, the lawyer, cleared his throat awkwardly. "Mrs. Cross, Miss Sterling. I'm sorry. I know that wasn't the outcome we hoped for regarding the equity, but financially, you are secure." Serafina stood up slowly. She smoothed the wrinkles of her charcoal dress. She picked up the check for $2 million. "Secure," she repeated, the word tasting like ash. "Yes, secure." She walked to the window and looked out at the rain-drenched city. Somewhere out there, in a penthouse she had decorated, Declan was popping champagne with Isabella, toasting to his freedom. He thought he had cut off a dead limb. Serafina reached into her purse and pulled out a burner phone, a cheap prepaid device she had bought 3 weeks ago with cash. She turned it on. There was only one number saved in the contacts. She dialed. It rang twice before a deep, gravelly voice answered. "I didn't think you'd actually call." "It's done, Nathaniel," Serafina said, her voice dropping an octave, losing the tremble of the scorned wife and gaining the steel of a tactician. "He signed?" the voice asked. "He signed. And he waived the non-compete clause because he thinks I'm too stupid to start a business," Serafina said, her eyes narrowing as she watched the traffic below. "He thinks I'm a housewife, Nathaniel. He forgot that before I was his wife, I was the one who taught him how to read a balance sheet. And the settlement? $2 million, liquid. That's not enough to buy a seat at the table, Sarah. You know that. We need at least 50 to trigger the leverage buyout clause you found in the bylaws." "I know," Serafina said. She turned away from the window, walking toward the door. She didn't look back at the divorce papers. "That's why we aren't going to buy a seat, Nate. We're going to build a new table, set it on fire, and wait for him to come running for a glass of water. Initiate Protocol Echo. Sell the brownstone in London that he doesn't know I inherited. Liquidate the crypto wallet I mined in 2014. Sarah," Nathaniel warned. "If you do this, there is no going back. If we fail, you're broke. Destitute." Serafina paused with her hand on the doorknob. She remembered Declan's laugh. The sheer, unadulterated joy he felt at discarding her. He laughed. "Nate," she whispered. He laughed while he signed. "Okay," Nathaniel said after a pause. "I'll have the papers ready in the morning. Welcome back to the game, Ghost." Serafina hung up. She walked out of the lawyer's office, her heels clicking a sharp, rhythmic beat on the marble floor. The fragile housewife was gone. In her place was the ghost, the legendary, anonymous coder who had vanished from the tech forums 6 years ago. Declan Cross had 3 months. He just didn't know it yet. The rain had stopped by the time Serafina reached the curb, but the air remained thick with the scent of wet asphalt and impending storms. She didn't hail a taxi. Instead, a black town car with tinted windows idled quietly in the loading zone. The driver, a burly man named Silas, who had been her father's driver before the family fortune had dwindled, or so the world thought, opened the door. "Where to, Miss Serafina?" "The warehouse district. Silas, Pier 4. Silas raised an eyebrow in the rearview mirror but said nothing. He merged into traffic, heading away from the glittering towers of downtown Seattle and toward the gritty, industrial skeletons of the old port. Serafina leaned back against the leather, closing her eyes. Her mind drifted back 10 years. She had met Declan at a hackathon in San Francisco. He was the frontman, charismatic, loud, brimming with big ideas but lacking the technical discipline to execute them. She was the quiet genius in the back of the room, fixing bugs in Python while eating stale pizza. They had been a perfect team. He sold the dream, she built the reality. When Crossline launched, the press lauded Declan as the next Steve Jobs. Serafina preferred it that way. She hated the cameras. She hated the scrutiny. She was happy to be the supportive wife, the secret weapon. But slowly, the dynamic shifted. The money came in. The sycophants surrounded him. Declan started believing his own press releases. He stopped asking for her input. Then he stopped coming home for dinner. Then came the criticism. You dress too plain. You're boring the investors. Why can't you be more like the other wives? He had hollowed her out, day by day, until she felt like a shell. No more, she thought, opening her eyes as the car pulled up to a nondescript brick building covered in graffiti. She stepped out. Waiting for her under a flickering street lamp was Nathaniel Pierce. Nathaniel was a legend in the venture capital world, known as the Vulture of the Valley. He had been blacklisted by the major firms for his aggressive tactics, but his brilliance was undeniable. He was also the only person who knew that Serafina was the ghost. "You look like hell, Sarah," Nathaniel said, flicking a cigarette into a puddle. He was wearing a trench coat that had seen better days, his gray hair windblown. "Flattery will get you nowhere," she replied, walking past him to the keypad on the steel door. She punched in a code from memory. The door hissed open. Inside, the warehouse was a humming hive of activity. It wasn't empty. It was filled with server racks. Rows and rows of cooling fans whirred in the darkness, illuminated only by blinking blue and green LEDs. "I kept it running," Nathaniel said, following her inside. "Just like you asked. 6 years. I told everyone I was mining Bitcoin, but we both know what these servers are actually doing. They're learning," Serafina said, walking down the aisle of servers, running her hand along the warm metal. "They've been scraping Crossline's public API data for 60 months, Nathaniel explained. "We have a mirror of their entire logistical network. We know their supply chain better than they do. And we know about the flaw in the Omega protocol." Serafina stopped. She turned to Nathaniel. "Isabella Vane. What's her angle?" Nathaniel chuckled darkly. "She's a corporate spy, Sarah. Or at least, she tries to be. She was planted at Crossline by Vanguard Systems, Declan's biggest competitor. But she fell in love with the lifestyle Declan provided and went rogue. She's not reporting to Vanguard anymore, but she's certainly not competent enough to run communications for a billion-dollar tech giant. Does Declan know? Declan is thinking with the wrong head. He thinks she's a prodigy because she uses buzzwords he likes." Serafina smiled, a cold, predatory expression. "Perfect. He has a spy he trusts, a system he doesn't understand, and a product launch in 3 months that relies on code only I can fix." "So, what's the play?" Nathaniel asked, leaning against a server rack. "We have your settlement money, plus my liquidity. We have about $12 million. Crossline is worth $400 million. We are David. He is Goliath." "David didn't buy Goliath," Serafina said softly. "David hit him in the one spot he wasn't protecting. We aren't going to buy his stock yet, Nate. That's too expensive." She walked to a workstation set up in the corner, dusting off the keyboard. She sat down, the blue light of the monitors reflecting in her eyes. "We are going to create a competitor," she said. "A shell. Aether Solutions. We're going to announce a product that does exactly what Crossline's new Orion project promises to do, but at half the price and twice the speed." "But we don't have a product," Nathaniel pointed out. "We don't need one," Serafina typed a command, and the screens flooded with code. "We just need to make the market believe we do. We need to drive Crossline's stock price down. When Declan panics, he'll try to push the Orion launch forward to beat us. And when he pushes the launch forward," Nathaniel realized, a grin spreading across his face. "He'll bypass the safety checks," Serafina finished. "He'll deploy the Omega protocol without the patch. The system will crash. Not just a glitch, a catastrophic failure. The stock will tank. The board will panic. And that," Nathaniel whispered, "is when we buy." That is when we buy, Serafina confirmed. I gave him everything, Nate. My youth, my ideas, my love. He took it and laughed. Now, I'm going to take the only thing he actually loves. His company, Nathaniel said. His legacy, Serafina corrected. Get me a meeting with the tech journalists. It's time for Aether Solutions to make a splash. 2 weeks later, the tech world woke up to a seismic shift, though the epicenter was quiet. It started not with a bang, but with a blog post on TechCrunch. The headline was innocuous enough. New player, Aether claims to solve the latency crisis. But the content was a declaration of war. In the penthouse office of Crossline Technologies, Declan Cross was getting a manicure. It was a Tuesday morning routine he had adopted recently, a symbol of a man who believed he had transcended the need to work. He sat in his Italian leather chair, one hand extended to the esthetician, the other holding a tablet. Isabella Vane was pacing the room, her heels sinking into the plush carpet. She wore a bright red power suit that cost more than most of the engineers' cars in the parking lot below. Have you seen the mentions, Declan? Isabella asked, her voice shrill. They're trending. Number Aether rising. Who the hell is Aether? I've had my team scour the databases. No registered HQ. No CEO listed on LinkedIn. Just a P.O. box in the Cayman Islands and a white paper that's... Well, it's annoying. Declan didn't look up from his screen. He was reading an article about his own bachelor party scheduled for the weekend. Relax, Bella. It's vaporware. Every year, some startup claims they have a quantum leap in processing speed. They burn through their seed money in 6 months and vanish. Remember Nebula? Remember SpeedStack? Gone. This is different, said a voice from the doorway. It was Vikram Singh, the Chief Technology Officer of Crossline. Vikram was a man of few words, a brilliant engineer who had been with the company since the garage days. He looked exhausted, dark circles rimming his eyes. He held a sheaf of papers, the Aether white paper. Declan sighed, signaling the esthetician to stop. Vikram, you look terrible. Don't tell me you're worried about this ghost story, too? I read their code samples, Declan, Vikram said, walking into the room and dropping the papers on the desk. They released a snippet of their kernel architecture on GitHub this morning. It's elegant. It solves the threading issue we've been stuck on for the Orion project for 8 months. Declan finally looked interested. He sat up, inspecting his polished nails. They stole our code? No, Vikram said gravely. That's the problem. It's better than our code. It's cleaner. It looks like the kind of work Serafina used to do. The air in the room went rigid. Declan stood up slowly, his face hardening. Don't say her name. I'm just saying the syntax is similar. Vikram backtracked quickly, sensing the danger. Look, if Aether is real, and if they launch before Orion, we are in trouble. Our predictive algorithm is still buggy. It creates false positives in the data stream. Aether claims 99.9% accuracy. Declan walked to the window, looking out over the city he felt he owned. He saw the crane constructing the new Crossline Annex. He saw the billboards with his face on them. He was a god here. They are bluffing, Declan declared. It's a tactic. Someone is trying to devalue us before the quarterly report so they can short the stock. I want you to find out who they are, Vikram. Hire private investigators. Hack them if you have to. I don't care. And the Orion launch? Vikram asked. We're scheduled for November. That gives us 6 months to fix the bugs. Declan turned around, a dangerous glint in his eye. Move it up. What? Vikram and Isabella said in unison. Move it up, Declan repeated, slamming his hand on the desk. We launch in August. 3 months. Declan, that's insane, Vikram protested. The safety protocols aren't finished. The load testing. Forget the safety protocols, Declan shouted. We are Crossline. We set the standard. If we let some no-name phantom company beat us to market, we look weak. We launch in August. Put the engineers on mandatory overtime. Double shifts. If they don't like it, fire them. But get out, Vikram. Make it happen. Vikram left, shaking his head. Isabella approached Declan, placing a hand on his chest. Are you sure, baby? August is so soon. I haven't even booked the venue. Declan smiled, pulling her close. Then get booking. We're going to crush them, Bella. Whoever is behind Aether is going to learn that you don't come at the king unless you want to be beheaded. 5 miles away, In the dim light of the warehouse, Serafina watched the live feed from the hidden camera she had installed in Declan's office 3 years ago, a little insurance policy hidden inside the smoke detector that she had never deactivated. She adjusted her headset. Nathaniel was sitting next to her, eating Chinese takeout from a carton. He took the bait, Serafina said, her voice devoid of emotion. He's moving the launch to August. Nathaniel whistled. August? That's suicide. The Orion architecture can't handle the user load without the patch you wrote. If he pushes that kind of data through those servers without the safety protocols, it won't just fail, it will melt. I know, Serafina said. She typed a command into her terminal. The screen displayed a complex web of financial transactions. He's forcing mandatory overtime. Morale is going to plummet. The good engineers will quit, the bad ones will stay and make mistakes. And what about Ether? Nathaniel asked. We need to keep the pressure on. It's time for phase 2, Serafina said. Leak the rumor that Aether is in talks with Google for an acquisition. Make it look like we're about to be bought out for billions. Declan's ego won't be able to handle the idea that a startup is worth more than his life's work. You're playing him like a fiddle, Sarah, Nathaniel noted, a hint of admiration and fear in his voice. You know, for a woman who spent 10 years arranging flowers, you have a terrifying aptitude for psychological warfare. Serafina looked at the screen, at the pixelated image of Declan laughing with Isabella. I didn't learn this from arranging flowers, Nate, she said softly. I learned it from living with a narcissist. You learn to predict their moves because your survival depends on it. I know exactly what he's going to do because he's not a man anymore. He's a reaction. A predictable, chemical reaction to a threat. She closed the laptop. Now, she said, standing up and smoothing her jeans. I need to go shopping. If I'm going to buy his company in 3 months, I need a dress for the celebration. The next few weeks were a blur of calculated chaos. Serafina, operating as the ghost CEO of Ether, orchestrated a masterclass in vaporware marketing. She released slick, CGI-rendered videos of Ether's technology working flawlessly. She had Nathaniel hire actors to pose as beta testers who gave glowing, ecstatic testimonials on YouTube. The tech world was in a frenzy. Crossline's stock began to wobble. Every time Declan gave an interview, the reporters asked about Ether. Mr. Cross, are you concerned that Ether's latency speeds are double yours? Mr. Cross, rumors say Google is offering $3 billion for Ether. Is Crossline falling behind? Declan's composure began to crack. He fired his VP of marketing. He screamed at interns. He started drinking at lunch. Meanwhile, inside Crossline, the atmosphere was toxic. Vikram Singh, the CTO, tried to hold the line. He sent memos detailing the critical risks of an early launch. Declan shredded them. He's bypassing the encryption layer, Serafina noted one evening in July, watching the system logs. She still had backdoor access to the development servers, a backdoor she had hard-coded into the BIOS level years ago. Declan's team had wiped her user accounts, but they hadn't wiped the hardware. He's turning off the firewalls to increase speed. He's desperate, Nathaniel said. He needs to match Aether's fake numbers, so he's stripping the armor off his tank to make it lighter. He's leaving the user data completely exposed, Serafina said, frowning. Nate, this is worse than I thought. When Orion crashes, it's going to expose the financial data of millions of users. Social security numbers, credit cards. Nathaniel sat up straight. Sarah, if that happens, the SEC will get involved. People could go to jail. The company won't just lose value, it will be obliterated. Serafina stared at the screen. She wanted revenge, yes. She wanted to hurt Declan. But she didn't want to hurt the innocent users. She didn't want to destroy the legacy of the company she helped build. She wanted to reclaim it. We have to be ready to catch it, she said firmly. We need to prepare a patch. As soon as the system fails, we need to be ready to deploy a fix instantly. That will be our leverage. We won't just buy the company, we'll save it. That's risky, Nathaniel warned. Intervening in their system? That's hacking. That's illegal. I'm not going to hack them, Serafina said, a small, mysterious smile playing on her lips. I'm going to let them invite me in. August 15th arrived with the heat of a blast furnace. The launch event for the Orion project was held at the Seattle Convention Center. It was styled to look like a futuristic temple, all white pillars, blue lasers, and thumping electronic music. Declan Cross had spared no expense. He had flown in influencers from around the globe. There were open bars serving blue cocktails named the Orion. There were acrobats suspended from the ceiling. It was a spectacle designed to distract from the fact that the product didn't work. Serafina did not attend. She sat in her war room at the warehouse, surrounded by a bank of 12 monitors. Silas, her driver, stood by the door as a guard. Nathaniel was on the phone with his bankers, ensuring the funds were ready for the kill. "Stock is trading at $145 a share," Nathaniel called out. "Market cap is still massive. We can't touch it yet." "Wait for it," Serafina said, her eyes glued to the live stream of the event. On the screen, the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd of 3,000 attendees. A spotlight hit the center stage, and Declan Cross emerged. He looked thinner than usual. His tan was spray-on, slightly too orange under the harsh stage lights. He wore a headset, microphone, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," Declan boomed, his voice amplified to the rafters. "Welcome to the future." Applause erupted, though it felt forced. For 10 years, Crossline has defined connectivity. Declan paced the stage. But today, we redefine reality. You've heard the rumors. You've heard the whispers of competitors who promise the moon but deliver dust. He paused for laughter, but got only polite titters. Today, I give you Orion. The giant screen behind him lit up. The interface was sleek, beautiful. Orion is not just an operating system, Declan said, sweating visibly now. It is a living, breathing ecosystem. It predicts what you want before you want it, and tonight, we are going to do a live demonstration. Serafina leaned forward. Here we go, the live demo. The idiot is actually going to do it live. He has to, Nathaniel said. To prove Ether wrong. On stage, Declan pulled out a prototype phone. I am going to connect to the Orion mainframe. I am going to process 1 petabyte of data in real time. Watch the latency counter. A giant red counter appeared on the screen. 0 milliseconds. Declan tapped the phone. Initiate. The counter flickered. 12 milliseconds. Then 45 milliseconds. Declan tapped the screen again, harder. As you can see, the connection is instantaneous. The counter jumped to 400 milliseconds. The screen behind him stuttered. The sleek interface froze. Just a network hiccup, Declan laughed nervously. Too many of you on the Wi-Fi? But it wasn't the Wi-Fi. In the server room at Crossline HQ, the cooling systems were failing. The processors, stripped of Serafina's optimization code, were overheating as they tried to handle the request. Suddenly, the giant screen behind Declan turned bright red. System failure. Critical error. A gasp went through the crowd. Then, the text changed. Rows of code began cascading down the screen. But it wasn't just code, it was data. User, J. Smith. Credit card, 4452. Sesen. 1121. Turn it off, Declan screamed, his voice cracking. He waved frantically at the sound booth. Cut the feed. Cut it. But the system was locked in a kernel panic. It was dumping its memory core directly onto the main display. The personal financial data of the board members who were sitting in the front row began to scroll past. Oh my God, Nathaniel whispered. It's a massacre. Serafina didn't blink. Her fingers flew across her keyboard. Look at the stock, Nate. Nathaniel checked the other monitor. It's diving. $120. $100. $85. The algorithms are auto-selling. The news is hitting Twitter. Crossline leaks data live on stage. It's a PR apocalypse. On stage, Declan stood frozen. The audience was booing. People were standing up, shouting. Isabella Vane ran onto the stage, trying to cover the camera lens of a reporter, but she tripped over a cable and fell, her dress tearing. It was a chaotic, humiliating farce. Declan looked small. The titan of tech looked like a lost child. It's at $50, Nathaniel shouted. They halted trading. The SEC just paused the stock. This is it, Serafina said. She picked up her phone. Protocol Echo is fully active. Get the board on the line. The board? Nathaniel asked. Why? Because Declan isn't in charge anymore, Serafina said coldly. The board is watching their net worth evaporate. They are terrified. They need a savior. She dialed a number she had memorized years ago, the personal cell of Arthur Pendleton, the chairman of the board. It rang once. "Who is this?" Arthur barked. He sounded frantic. In the background, Serafina could hear shouting. "Hello, Arthur," Serafina said. "It's Serafina." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Serafina? We're in the middle of a crisis here." "I know," she said calmly. "I'm watching it. It's the encryption layer, Arthur." Declan removed the load-bearing limiters. "The database is vomiting everything because it's overheating." "Can you stop it?" Arthur asked, his voice desperate. "Declan is useless. He's having a breakdown on stage." "I can fix it," Serafina said. "I have a patch written. I can deploy it remotely and seal the breach in 30 seconds. I can save the data." "Do it," Arthur screamed. "For God's sake, do it." "Not for free, Arthur," Serafina said. Her voice was like steel. "And not for Declan. What do you want?" "I want the company," she said. "I want to buy a controlling interest, 51%, and I want to buy it at the current market price, $42 a share." "That's hostile. That's robbery. That's the price of survival," Serafina countered. "If I don't fix this in the next 2 minutes, the breach will reach the archival servers. You'll lose everything. The lawsuits will bankrupt you personally, Arthur." A long pause. She heard Arthur breathing heavily. "Do it," Arthur whispered. "Save us. We'll sign. I'm sending the contract to your lawyer now. Digital signature required immediately." Serafina hit send on the document Nathaniel had prepared. Seconds later, a notification pinged. "Signed." "Upload the patch," Serafina commanded. Nathaniel hit enter. On the screen at the convention center, the red error message vanished. The scrolling data stopped. A blue loading bar appeared. "System restored. Encryption secured." The crowd quieted down. The bleeding stopped. Serafina leaned back in her chair, letting out a breath she felt she had been holding for 10 years. "It's done," she whispered. "I own it." "You own it," Nathaniel confirmed, grinning like a shark. "You just bought a $400 million company for, well, pennies on the dollar." "Now," Serafina said, standing up. "Get the car, Silas. I think it's time I crashed the party." The drive from the warehouse district to the Seattle Convention Center took 20 minutes, but for Serafina, it felt like traveling through time. She watched the city blur past the tinted windows of the town car. The rain had started again, washing the streets clean, just as she intended to wash away the last decade of her life. Her phone buzzed incessantly. It was Nathaniel, updating her on the financial fallout. The patch held. Nathaniel's voice crackled through the car's Bluetooth speakers. "Data leakage stopped at 4% of the user base. It's bad, but it's survivable." The stock bottomed out at $38 and is hovering there. The press is calling it the blue screen of death too. But here is the kicker. Sarah, the SEC has already announced a probe into the insider trading allegations regarding Declan's pre-launch stock dump. "He sold stock?" Serafina asked, raising an eyebrow. She adjusted the cuff of her white silk blazer. "This morning. He liquidated $10 million worth just hours before the event. He knew." "Sarah. Deep down, he knew it was going to fail, and he tried to cash out. That's prison time." "Good," Serafina said, her voice icy. "But prison is too easy. I want him to see me sitting in his chair first." The car pulled up to the VIP entrance of the convention center. It was a scene of absolute bedlam. News vans were double parked, satellite dishes spinning wildly. Paparazzi were swarming the exits, trying to get a shot of the disgraced CEO. Security guards in yellow vests were overwhelmed, shouting into radios that no one was listening to. Silas, her driver, stepped out and opened the rear door. He offered his hand. Serafina stepped out. The flashbulbs didn't go off immediately. The press didn't know who she was. To them, she was just another wealthy attendee, perhaps an investor fleeing the sinking ship. She walked with a purposeful stride, head high, ignoring the chaotic shouts of reporters asking, "Is Crossline bankrupt? Is the app spyware?" She reached the security checkpoint. A frantic guard held up a hand. "Ma'am, the venue is on lockdown. No re-entry. It's a hazard zone." Serafina didn't stop. She reached into her purse and pulled out the digital contract she had just signed, displayed on her tablet. She shoved it under the guard's nose. "I'm not a guest," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a razor. I'm the owner. Move. The guard glanced at the document, saw the signature of the board chairman, and blanched. He stepped aside, speaking hurriedly into his earpiece. Command, stand down. We have a priority, VIP incoming. Serafina walked into the main hall. It was a disaster zone. The blue lasers were still spinning, cutting through the smoky air, but the music had stopped. The floor was littered with discarded champagne flutes and brochures. The giant screen on stage was now black, save for a single, blinking cursor. She found her way to the backstage corridors, navigating the maze of cables and panicked sound technicians. She could hear shouting coming from the green room, the private lounge reserved for the executives. She recognized the voices. You sabotaged me. Declan's voice was hoarse, bordering on hysterical. It was the hardware. It was the vendor. I told you we needed better cooling units. You told us the cooling units were overkill and cut the budget by 30% to pay for the launch party. Arthur Pendleton's voice roared back. Arthur was usually a composed man, an old money patrician, but tonight he sounded like a man who had just watched his legacy burn. Serafina stopped at the door. She took a breath. She smoothed her hair. She pushed the door open. The room fell silent. There were 6 people inside. Declan was pacing, his tie undone, sweat staining his dress shirt. Isabella Vane was crying in the corner, clutching a glass of vodka. Arthur Pendleton sat on a velvet sofa, his head in his hands. 2 other board members stood by the catering table, looking shell-shocked. They all looked at her. Declan was the first to speak. He blinked, as if he was hallucinating. Sierra? What the hell are you doing here? He let out a short, incredulous laugh, a weak echo of the one he had given in the lawyer's office. Did you come to gloat? Is that it? You saw the news and came to rub it in? Get out, security. He marched toward her, reaching out to grab her arm. Don't touch her, Arthur Pendleton said. The command was quiet, but it stopped Declan in his tracks. Declan turned to the chairman. What? Arthur, she's trespassing. She's my ex-wife. She's nobody. Arthur stood up slowly. He looked old. He looked tired. He looked at Serafina with a mixture of shame and gratitude. She's not trespassing, Declan, Arthur said heavily. She's the majority shareholder. Declan froze. The color drained from his face, leaving him a sickly gray. What? We sold, Arthur said, gesturing to the other board members. 10 minutes ago, when the system crashed, when the data started leaking, we were facing a class action lawsuit that would have liquidated the company assets within a week. We had no choice. You sold to her? Declan whispered. He looked back at Serafina. She hadn't moved. She stood there, a statue of calm judgment. You couldn't have, Declan stammered, his mind racing to find a logical escape. She has no money. She walked away with $2 million. Crossline is worth... It was worth billions. I had help, Serafina said. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. And I didn't buy it for billions, Declan. I bought it for $42 a share. You crashed the value so hard that you made yourself affordable. This is illegal, Declan spat, backing away. This is a hostile takeover. I'm the CEO. You can't just... Actually, Serafina interrupted, stepping further into the room. She walked past him, toward the center of the room. She looked at Isabella, who was staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. You aren't the CEO anymore. The acquisition agreement included a restructuring clause. Effective immediately, all C-level executive positions are vacated pending a performance review. She turned to face Declan. He looked small. The titan. The visionary. He was just a man in a sweaty shirt. You're fired, Declan, she said. The silence that followed was suffocating. You can't do this, Declan hissed. I built this. I am Crossline. You were the face, Serafina corrected him. I was the code. And the face is easily replaced. The code is forever. She reached into her purse and pulled out a single, folded piece of paper. It was the divorce decree. The one he had signed 3 months ago. You told me to go find a librarian, she said, tossing the paper onto the coffee table. You told me I was mediocre. You laughed at me, Declan. Do you remember? Declan stared at the paper. His hands were shaking. I remember, he whispered. Good, Serafina said, because I want you to remember that laugh every time you look at this building from the outside. I want you to remember that you didn't lose your company to a competitor or a market shift, or bad luck. You lost it because you underestimated the woman who fixed your mistakes. She turned to Arthur. Arthur, have security escort Mr. Cross off the premises. Revoke his credentials. If he tries to access the servers, have him arrested. Sierra, please. Declan stepped forward, his arrogance finally shattering into desperation. Let's talk about this. We can work something out. I can stay on as a consultant. I know the investors. I can help you. Serafina looked at him. She searched her heart for any flicker of pity, any remnant of the love she had once held for him. She found nothing, just the memory of a rainy afternoon and a cruel laugh. I don't need your help, Declan, she said. I have the ghost. Declan's eyes went wide. The ghost? The hacker? You're working with them? Serafina smiled. It was the first time she had smiled all night. I am the ghost, she said. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He staggered back, bracing himself against the wall. The pieces fell into place. The legacy code. The ether rumors. The specific nature of the crash. It was you, he breathed, the whole time. Goodbye, Declan, Serafina said, turning her back on him. 2 security guards entered the room. They weren't the confused event staff. They were private contractors Serafina had brought with her. They flanked Declan. Mr. Cross, one of them said. This way, sir. Declan looked at Serafina's back. He opened his mouth to scream, to beg, to curse, but nothing came out. He allowed himself to be led away, a broken king leaving his burning palace. As the door closed behind him, Serafina let out a long sigh. She looked at Isabella, who was trembling. And you, Serafina said. Isabella flinched. I was just doing my job. He made me. Save it, Serafina said dismissively. Pack your things, Isabella. You're not worth the energy of a speech. The next morning, the Seattle skyline was crisp and clear, but inside the lobby of Crossline Technologies, the atmosphere was suffocating. The news had broken overnight. Crossline, acquired by Investor Group, led by Serafina Sterling. At 9 a.m. sharp, the automatic doors slid open. Serafina walked in. The drab gray clothes of her marriage were gone. She wore a tailored navy suit, her heels clicking a sharp rhythm of authority on the terrazzo floor. Behind her walked Nathaniel Pierce and Vikram Singh, the loyal CTO who had defected to her side in the middle of the night. They took the elevator to the 42nd floor in silence. The executive suite looked exactly as it had 3 months ago, yet entirely different. Call an all-hands meeting for 10 a.m. Serafina instructed the head assistant. She walked straight to the CEO's office and pushed the heavy oak doors open. It was full of ghosts. Declan's framed magazine covers lined the walls. His humidor sat on the desk. Clear it out, Serafina told the maintenance staff. Send it to his storage unit. If he doesn't pay the fee, auction it off. She walked to the massive mahogany desk where he had signed the divorce papers. She sat in the chair. It was too big, adjusted for his height. She pulled the lever, lowering it until her feet were planted firmly on the ground. Vikram, I want a full code audit, she commanded, shifting instantly into business mode. Kill the Orion interface, roll back to the stable version. We apologize to the customers, and we rebuild trust slowly. No more flash, just good code. Understood, Vikram smiled. It's good to work for an engineer again. Nathaniel, she turned to her CFO. Audit the accounts. I want to know exactly how much company money Declan spent on Isabella Vane. We're going to sue him for embezzlement. Just then, shouting erupted in the outer lobby. You can't stop me. I built this place. Serafina spun the chair around. Through the glass walls, she saw Declan. He was wearing the same clothes as the night before, disheveled and manic, wrestling with the security guards. Let him in, Serafina said. Declan stumbled into the office. You think you can steal this? He shouted, pointing a shaking finger at her. I spoke to my lawyers. Aether Solutions was a fraud. You manipulated the market. I'll have you buried in indictments. Serafina didn't flinch. She rested her elbows on the desk. Aether was a holding company, she said calmly. We never sold a product. We simply released marketing materials. If you chose to believe the hype without doing due diligence, that's bad leadership, not fraud. You lied. I marketed, she corrected. And as for the stock price, you crashed it, Declan. You launched a broken product. You ignored your CTO. You sold your own stock based on insider knowledge of the failure. That is the only crime committed here. She picked up a file folder. And regarding Isabella, here is the internal report from Vanguard Systems. She was sending them weekly reports on your development cycle. She played you, Declan. She fed you bad intel on Aether to make you panic. Declan froze. The fight drained out of him. Isabella? She wasn't loyal. Nobody was. Because you bought loyalty, and when the money ran out, so did they. Declan slumped. He looked around the office, realizing it was truly gone. I have nothing, he whispered. The settlement money. I put it all into the launch party. The stock is frozen by the SEC. I'm broke. Serafina stood up. She walked around the desk and stood in front of him. You have $2 million, she said. Declan looked confused. What? The settlement check, she said, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket. The one you slid across this desk 3 months ago. I never cashed it. She held it out to him. Take it, she said. I didn't need your money to beat you. It's enough to start over. Go find a nice quiet life. Maybe buy a library. Declan took the check with a trembling hand. The irony was suffocating. Why? He asked, his voice breaking. Why give it back? Because? Serafina said, turning her back on him to face her team. I don't want anything that belongs to you. I have what I wanted. My name? She signaled the guards. Please show Mr. Cross out. Declan looked at her one last time, the woman he had dismissed as mediocre, now standing as a titan in his former castle. He turned and walked out, clutching the check, a broken king exiled from his own kingdom. As the elevator doors closed on his face, Serafina picked up a pen. Right, she said to Vikram. Let's get to work. The transition of power was not a gentle shift. It was a surgical excision of rot. For the first month after the takeover, Serafina Sterling didn't sleep in her own bed. She slept on a cot in the server room, personally overseeing the code audit. The Orion catastrophe had shattered public trust, and Serafina knew the only way to fix it was radical transparency. She held a press conference, no lasers, no hype, and looked the world in the eye. We messed up, she admitted calmly. We are taking Crossline offline for 48 hours to rebuild. It will cost us millions, but your data is more important than our stock price. The tech world, exhausted by Declan's bluster, respected the honesty. Inside the company, the frat house culture was purged. Sycophants were fired, and quiet engineers like Vikram were promoted. 6 months later, Crossline released Aegis, a bulletproof security suite. The stock didn't just recover, it soared. Nathaniel Pierce walked into Serafina's office one rainy afternoon and dropped a copy of Forbes on her desk. The cover featured Serafina, unsmiling and formidable. Under the headline, The Silent Titan. We're up 40% year over year, Nathaniel grinned. Arthur Pendleton wants to name his yacht after you. Tell him no, Serafina said, signing a document without looking up. And Declan? Nathaniel's grin faded. It's exactly as you predicted. Declan Cross had taken his $2 million settlement to Miami to launch a crypto venture called Apex Coin. But without Serafina's brain to back up his bluster, it was riddled with vulnerabilities. He was hacked, investigated by the SEC for the Crossline insider trading, and fined into oblivion. He's broke, Nathaniel confirmed. He's selling alpha male leadership courses on TikTok to pay rent. Serafina looked out the window at the city she now owned. Let him go, Nate. He's just a user error we finally debugged. 1 year later, the charity gala in New York was the highlight of the social season. Serafina moved through the crowd in a midnight blue gown, radiating a quiet power that drew investors like moths to a flame. But the moment that defined her victory happened outside, in the snow. As Silas brought the Bentley around, Serafina saw a man arguing with the young valet. He wore a tuxedo that was too tight and looked years out of date. It was Declan. Do you know who I am? I founded Crossline, he shouted, his voice cracking. If you're not on the list, you can't come in, the valet said, unimpressed. Declan turned, desperate for validation, and locked eyes with Serafina. He froze. He took in the chauffeur, the paparazzi, and the Forbes cover come to life. He stepped forward, shivering in the slush. Sarah? He forced a smile, trying to summon the old charm. I've been meaning to call. I have a new idea. It's big, bigger than Orion. I just need a little seed capital. For old time's sake? We were a good team, right? He extended a hand. Serafina looked at him. She remembered the laugh in the lawyer's office. She remembered feeling small. But now, she felt nothing but indifferent pity. We weren't a team, Declan, she said calmly. I was the engine. You were the hood ornament. And I don't need a hood ornament anymore. She stepped into the car without looking back. Sarah, wait, Declan shouted, stepping forward, but Silas blocked his path like a stone wall. Inside the warm car, Nathaniel checked his watch. Ready to go home? No, Serafina said, opening her laptop as the car pulled away, leaving Declan Cross behind in the cold. To the airport. We're launching the Quantum Project. I'm just getting started. Serafina Sterling's journey from the shadows to the spotlight wasn't just a business victory, it was a reclamation of self. She proved that while charisma might open doors, it is competence that keeps the building standing. Declan Cross learned the hardest lesson of all. When you build your castle on the backs of others, the foundation eventually walks away. He signed the divorce papers laughing, thinking he was discarding a burden. In reality, he was signing his own resignation. Serafina didn't just buy his company, she bought her freedom. And that is the story of how the ghost took back her crown. It's a powerful reminder that you should never underestimate the quiet ones in the room, because they are usually the ones who know where the code is written. What did you think of Declan's fate? Did he deserve to be left in the snow, or was Serafina too cold? Personally, I think the best revenge is massive success. If you enjoyed this story of corporate revenge, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you laugh at on your way up, because you might meet them on your way down.